And we're back in the car like we never left. Welcome to the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all for spending some of your Tuesday afternoon here with me in New York. But once again, we're going to skip past all that promotional jazz and get right to the guts of the episode. We have another movie anniversary, and this is a film that I have a problematic relationship with. I don't think it's as good as its reputation, and there aren't that many films that I say that about, I don't think. It's a movie that I saw in theaters on its opening day. This was not a good time in my life. This was just a few days after Massapequa High School class of 1992 graduation. I wasn't doing that well. Maybe that kind of tilted my experience. I just think the film is okay. It's not a bad movie, but I feel like there was something left on the table, that there was an opportunity to make an even better film because the principal actors and actresses really hit their marks, bring their proverbial A game. It just kind of left me a little bit flat. It took the easy way out, I thought, at various points. I was just thinking of the song by Robert Tepper from Rocky IV, "There's no easy way out, there's no shortcut home." I feel like this movie should have been better. And it's not that there were corners cut, it's that the filmmaker, who I really like, Penny Marshall, she had done Big a few years prior, they didn't take enough. They could have taken more chances, was my perception. It was a very straightforward telling of this particular really great historical story of the first women's professional baseball league. The movie, of course, is 1992's A League of Their Own, celebrating its 33rd anniversary today. And I gotta tell you, seeing that movie in theaters, it doesn't feel like it was that many years ago. But that's the way it goes. I saw a lot of movies that summer. Lethal Weapon 3, I think I may have seen the day before. And Eddie Murphy's Boomerang, a film which is also not that great and probably should have been better given the talent level involved in that one, was released the same day, July 1st, 1992. And stupid trivia, if you want to call it that, if you compare the box office grosses of Boomerang and A League of Their Own, they're like within $1 million. So both of those films, technically both comedies, but completely different. You have a comedy with the romance angle of Boomerang, a player who's about to get played, a film with a good message. It went over my head when I was younger, but the movie was basically coming down hard, that's what she said, but coming down hard upon the thought process of men who see women as plaything and nothing more, and that they don't take them seriously, notch on a bedpost, all that stuff. None of this meant anything, but that movie actually is better than its reputation. I think that it should have gotten better reviews than it did, and there were critics that had some weird problems with it. But A League of Their Own, a lot of it is true. Now, some of the substance of drama, the sort of rivalry, if you will, between, are they half-sisters? This part I don't remember. I've seen A League of Their Own, I think, 3 times from start to finish. But you have a character of Kit Keller, played by a terrific Lori Petty. She had been in Point Break with Keanu the previous summer, and of course the late, great Patrick Swayze. And Gina Davis, who to me is just a lifelong end boss, a home run hitter of an actress, just a fucking great actress and movie star as well. She was somebody that was both. She was somebody who had the talent, Oscar-worthy ability you saw in films like Thelma and Louise, but just a magnetism and a charisma that, again, the sort of individual it's difficult to explain to people who weren't there when she was making movies like A League of Their Own or Thelma and Louise. So the sort of rivalry between those two characters, and that was emphasized for the movie. The character of Dottie Hinson was based on someone, I don't remember the name, and the name of the team there on the Rockford Peaches, that I'm pretty sure that wasn't the name of of the team. But from the historical perspective, and you know that I'm all about the history, to me this film is more important because of Tom Hanks, and because of where Tom Hanks was in his career at this point, where he had been, where he was at that time, and where he was going. And in the quite stupendous film career of Tom Hanks, he came on the scene. He was he had a kind of a series of guest shots on my favorite sitcom, Family Ties. He played Michael J. Fox's uncle on the show, Ned, the brother of Elise. That was the mother character, played by Meredith Baxter. And, you know, you look back on it, and he's not really that great in that role. He has a couple of interesting line readings, but he wasn't ready for prime time. Like, Tom Hanks was somebody who didn't out the gate, and he's already hitting on all cylinders. He needed time to get his kind of legs under him, because he had started in sitcoms. Peter Scolari, Bosom Buddies, which I think was right around the same time as when he had the guest shots on Family Ties. That I'm also not sure of the specific timeline. But you look at Tom Hanks's leading man era, which begins with Bachelor Party and Splash. Now, Splash is a movie, I like the first 3/4 of it. And then it goes so far off the rails, I can't believe that it is a movie which is as beloved as it is. Because I think the film the last act is so bad, it destroys the rest of the movie. And that is a film where his co-stars basically steal it from him. It should be Tom Hanks's movie, but instead we remember John Candy, John Candy was John Candy. And Eugene Levy, who is absolutely right. You could argue that Eugene Levy steals the film from both of them, and the co-star Daryl Hannah, who's terrific, but it's not really that exciting it's a good role. She plays a mermaid, but we remember the supporting performers in that one. And Hanks had success in some silly comedies, such as Volunteers, also with John Candy, Men with One Red Shoe with Laurie Singer, and Money Pit with Shelley Long. It's kind of a culty film for Gen Xers. I know a lot of people that say, oh, that was when I became a fan of Tom Hanks. Then the black comedy of The Burbs, the guilty pleasure, utter ridicularity of Dragnet with Dan Aykroyd, who was just fantastic in that film. It's not a great movie, and Tom doesn't get to do that much. But Big showed that he could hit certain notes dramatically. He wasn't going to allow himself to be pigeonholed into, he's just a light comedian. He has the feel and the form of a sketch comic because of Bosom Buddies and some of the laugh lines he gets on Family Ties and the more lighter moments. His character is really fucked up, Uncle Ned. He's got a lot of problems, as we see. But you could tell, if you look at what Tom Hanks was doing in his earlier career, he wanted to test himself. He wanted to do more. And what Big showed was he's better than we thought. He hit some dramatic notes in Big, which showed this guy is still developing. He is not a finished product as a film actor. He's getting better. He's improving. So he's nominated for Best Actor for Big. And there were some people that thought he maybe had a chance to pull an upset, but it was Dustin Hoffman's year for Rain Man. Now, my problem with Dustin in that movie it's not his fault. It's that the character is so one note. We can marvel at the technical wizardry, the craftsmanship. From that perspective, what Hoffman does in Rain Man, it's up there with like any other actor in any other role. It's up there with Daniel Day-Lewis, My Left Foot, where you say, how is this person just acting? The character just goes nowhere in Rain Man. If you ask me, I think Tom Cruise gives the better performance. Now, what can I say? And I said the same thing about when Paul Newman won his Best Actor Oscar a couple of years before Rain Man in The Color of Money. Newman got the hardware, but Tom Cruise pulls off, to me, the more difficult role in both films. He lost to, well, he didn't even lose. He wasn't nominated, but the big hitters got the hardware. Newman won his only acting Oscar. It's disgusting that he had never won up to that point. And Dustin Hoffman. But Tom Hanks in Big, it showed he was willing to take a little bit more in the way of risky roles. And Penny Marshall, who, as I say, directed A League of Their Own. Answer to a trivia question, which is unfortunate that it's even a trivia question. The first $100 million grossing film directed by a female filmmaker. Penny Marshall and Big. You know, maybe somebody will ask you that at a bar and you'll get a free drink or something. But that really is a trivia question. So Hanks, he was very busy in that era. He did a movie which a lot of people also of Gen X love called Turner and Hooch. I don't think that film is good. I don't like that movie. It was a hit, and it is a performance by Hanks, pretty well remembered. I know a lot of people that really enjoy The Burbs, but then in 1990, he was really busy. You had Joe versus the Volcano, which was kind of a conventional romantic comedy with Meg Ryan, and it didn't really set the box office on fire. And he thought, and he was under the impression, that he was going to get another Oscar nomination for playing the lead of Sherman McCoy in a movie that I have talked about on the channel, but it's worth repeating in this particular episode, The Bonfire of the Vanities, the Brian De Palma's adaptation of Tom Wolfe's runaway best-selling, one of the great fiction books with elements of fact. Certain people are called different names, that sort of thing. But one of the best books written in the latter part of the 20th century. There's so many people that will, like if you Google it, that's a book that is going to appear on a lot of what's the best book I ever read. Tom Wolfe's The Bonfire of the Vanities. When The Bonfire of the Vanities bombed, and it's not just that it bombed financially, it's the fact that most critics didn't like it. They got the satire of the book, it just didn't translate. And Tom Hanks, despite all the success he'd already had in his first 6 to 7 years in his leading man era, and the challenging roles he had already taken, and the Oscar nomination for Big, he was crushed. He was legitimately very badly wounded by the failure of Bonfire. Even though Bruce Willis saw it coming and Morgan Freeman knew they were in big trouble, Hanks didn't realize that the movie was going to be a catastrophe. So he took some time off, and he has talked about this in interviews. You can find various interviews on YouTube from this era. But he felt he had more, that he had more to give in every sense. He just needed to find it within himself. And he didn't really work for a number of months. He took a small role in a film which should have been good, from David Mickey Evans, a fantastic writer and a talented filmmaker in his own right, called Radio Flyer. Not a good movie. I mean, not a good movie. The pieces were in place. It's a film basically about child abuse, couched in riddles, and we're not really sure if that's what it is. Spoiler alert, that's what it is. It is a very slow slog through depressive territory, just horrible stuff. And, man, a difficult movie. And Tom basically plays a sort of disembodied voice for most of that film. He's narrating the story, so he doesn't really have to do that much in terms of emoting. He reads it as if he's into it. This is not Harrison Ford half-assing it, and it works in Blade Runner in this sort of noir style. But Tom took the role of Jimmy Dugan in this era as he was, presumably circling and then beginning to work and then recording his scenes. It was mostly him doing, as I say, voiceover for Radio Flyer, because Radio Flyer was released earlier in 92. I should have, brought that up. Now, I saw that in theaters, did not like it. I left the theater like, what the fuck did I just watch? That's something that hadn't happened that much when I went to the movies, where I said, what the fuck did I just watch while leaving the theater? Because there were movies I thought sucked, but I didn't have a reaction like, who thought this was a good idea? In the immortal words of Siskel and Ebert, I wish that I could see the story conferences where anybody thought that this movie was going to make money or be a critical darling or both. I don't even understand. But Tom Hanks took the role of a fictional character based on a real person. And I love that idea, and I like movies that maybe were intended to be the actual person, but you make a few adjustments. Mel Gibson in The Patriot all those years ago was supposed to play Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox, and then, we don't really need to. Francis Marion was like a horrendous human being on top of being the Swamp Fox, so let's just create a different character loosely based on the Swamp Fox. We'll just call him Benjamin Martin. We'll give him a different name. But in the case of A League of Their Own, because it wasn't going to exactly be a legendary, all-time great baseball player like a notch below Lou Gehrig and a peer of Mickey Mantle named Jimmy Fox. And the real life Jimmy Fox, with 2 X's, hit 534 home runs in his career. He mostly played for the Philadelphia Athletics, which in the late 20s into the 30s, they were the Yankees' primary competition often in the American League. They actually won 3 consecutive American League pennants when the Yankees were still pretty good, but they weren't what they had been, in the 27-28 era, where they were winning 100 games and just going nuts. But the character was not exactly Jimmy Fox, so they call him Jimmy Dugan. and he's the manager of the Rockford Peaches in the world of A League of Their Own. And you have, as I say, Gina Davis as the star player and catcher, and Lori Petty as, I guess she was a pitcher. I don't know. I don't remember if she played other positions or whether she only, let's say, for example, got to bat when she was the pitcher. But at the time when the movie was in preparation and was released, the fact that Madonna plays a pretty important supporting role, that was what people were talking about. Because Madonna, in the pre-internet, pre-social media era, Madonna was somehow still everywhere. And Dick Tracy was 2 years prior, and her high-profile, is a cliche, a high-profile romance, her high-profile romance with Warren Beatty at the time of Dick Tracy. And then in 91, when the movie Truth or Dare, the documentary by Alec Kashishian, also a fine filmmaker, he did With Honors in 94. But when Truth or Dare came out, and then Madonna's Sex Book and the Justify My Love video, she was still, you couldn't turn around without hearing something or seeing something, or she's on the news, or she's attending a basketball game and supposedly she's having sex with Charles Barkley. She was everywhere. But in A League of Their Own, I think she may have caused some problems on set with some silly behavior. I'm not sure about that, because they said Rosie O'Donnell, who was also in the film, that was kind of how they became friends. I think, again, this is so many years ago. This film was shot late 1991. But Madonna's performance is good. If you don't know who that is, if you think it is just a kind of cute supporting actress type, she's terrific. She's not trying to steal any scenes. She has this one moment where she almost obliquely references herself about being an exhibitionist. You know, what would happen if I go to make a catch and one of my bosoms just falls out? And then Rosie O'Donnell with the perfect line reading of, "You think there's men in this country ain't seen your bosoms?" Now, she is talking about Madonna. She's not talking about the character. That is very much a nail meat head. The film just kind of breezily goes along. And I just remember watching the film and I was smiling for most of its running time. I enjoyed the movie. I liked it. John Lovitz, you almost wish that John Lovitz had a bigger role. He plays a scout and he gets a lot of laughs in the first portion of the film. I thought he was fantastic. He didn't really have that much of a film career, John Lovitz, but man, he's perfectly cast in this movie. And yeah, there were some people saying, Lovitz is so good, I wish that he was in more of the movie. Maybe he could have gotten, maybe not a best supporting actor, nomination, but that he would have gotten more acclaim for this particular performance, because the scenes he's in, he just dominates because his character is funny and he had the perfect handle on it. Obviously, you have to give the director, Penny Marshall, credit for that. But Hanks's time in this film, his character has moments of humor, but he's not a figure of fun. The character of Jimmy Dugan, he's kind of a washout. He sort of drank at the end of his playing days away, I guess we're led to believe. And he is not a clown character. We are not supposed to laugh at him that much. We are often laughing with him. But Hanks has said that he just knew he had more. And if you look at how Tom Hanks reads his lines, you watch the way he pauses just for an extra beat before starting to speak. These are all things that went right. I didn't even know that this existed. But you compare what he does, Joe versus the Volcano, which is, more or less a comedy. Bonfire of the Vanities, which is a black comedy and a satire, but for huge chunks, it plays like a drama. It almost looks like the Tom Hanks from Bonfire is an imposter because he is reacting too quickly and it's too much surface. And somehow, by the time of A League of Their Own, even though that's also a comedy, there is a gravitas to him that did not exist in Bonfire of the Vanities. It just wasn't there. And you could argue that it's kind of there in Big, but I just feel like the skill of his performance is what carries that movie, how great he is, making us believe this is really a 12-year-old boy in the body of a 35-year-old man. Again, from the craftsmanship standpoint, it's stupendous work from Hanks in the movie Big. But in A League of Their Own, Jimmy Dugan is a bit of a tragic figure. He doesn't want to be managing this team, but he starts to pick up, and this may be a cliche, this didn't bother me, his love for the sport. This is a guy whose life has been baseball. It's not a joke to him. He takes this shit very seriously. And the show-stopping moment, which, when Tom Hanks finally retires, when he goes off into the sunset of Hollywood, at some point, you don't have to work forever. Sean Connery was 72 when he walked away. And here's Harrison Ford, 82, going on 83, and he's still going. Tom Hanks could call it a career now, a couple of years, doesn't matter. But the one moment in his entire career that we're going to see first is from A League of Their Own. And it's something that I don't think Jimmy Fox ever had a rant about there's no crying in baseball. But whoever came up with this brief monologue that Jimmy Dugan throws at one of his players who makes a bad play, I mean, it's baseball. You see with the Yankees, even great fielders like Aaron Judge fuck up, or Anthony Volpe, a terrific shortstop. The kid fucks up. Comes off the field and she's kind of sobbing because not only did she fuck up, but he had barked at her. And he has this show-stopping moment. There's no crying in baseball. And I got to be honest, that moment should have gotten him the Best Supporting Actor Oscar, and he wasn't even nominated. Gene Hackman won for Unforgiven that year, and it was a lot of big, terrific supporting performances. David Paymer with Billy Crystal and Mr. Saturday Night, he was great. But it's so perfect. It is such a perfect moment, and it is something that Tom Hanks has revisited in he hasn't said it in other movies, but on his social media, he's a real character. But when he, and this is obviously not a great memory for any of us, but when he got sick with COVID all those years ago now, more than 5 years ago, he wanted people to know, I feel okay, I'm going to be fine, and remember, there's no crying in baseball. And it was just such a perfect, at a moment where everybody was feeling like shit, either literally or symbolically or emotionally, so much crap was going on at that particular point in time. For Tom Hanks to reference a movie that was already 28 years old, that most people liked a lot more than I did, it brought a smile to faces of people at a time when we kind of needed it. And if the movie is not altogether successful, I didn't think the rivalry was necessary. I thought the movie made a mistake, spoiler alert, by trading Kit away so that they could have some kind of a showdown. And then, is Gina still trying? Is her character, is Dottie kind of throwing it on purpose? I thought the movie was not as good in its final half as it was in the first half. The setup, the league establishing like Madonna's character and Rosie's character, all of that stuff, and the way the time period was set, and the realities of the era, as far as, we're going to get into a little bit of, political stuff here, but it was wartime. The Joe DiMaggios of the world were off to war. Ted Williams, the big star baseball players of the era, but also the fact that women in some ways were both over sexualized and were forced into a certain kind of a box. And it's one of the things I think this movie does beautifully is it shows that the league seems to be going downhill, or not even going downhill. It's not catching on. And then Dottie Hinson makes a maneuver, which is not, she would never do it in a real game. If you tried something like this now, you would probably be fined and maybe suspended for just being a schmuck, because it's like ridiculous. Instead of just making a catch, she does a split. And that gets people excited because there was some form of almost sexual component to the way she did that. And again, what I said about Madonna saying, what if one of my bosoms pops out? They're trying to figure out ways to drum up fan interest. And sometimes, as, what was the name? Joel McCrea as filmmaker John Sullivan in Sullivan's Travels, a little sex. And what we're presented with in this film is that the women's league, the baseball league, part of the reason why it caught on is because the players were willing to play ball. They were willing to do stupid promotions like, for $1, one of your favorite player will give you a kiss on the cheek. Just dumb stuff like that, which we know is not far-fetched. It's embarrassing from a certain point of view, but it's a capitalist society. People were hurting during the war. And I mean, I could think of a lot worse things to have to do if we're going to sort of compromise our virtue a little bit. What's presented in the movie it's palatable. It doesn't come across as gross or dirty or overly demeaning. It's logical based on the history and trying to have a league that's going to sustain itself. People are trying to make money. The more people in the seats, the better the team does. Ownership, and if Jimmy Dugan wants to come back and manage next year, let's just hope there is a next year. So when I many years later, about 12 or 13 years after A League of Their Own, I started to write for an online magazine. I won't tell you the name of the magazine or who the editor-in-chief was. But when I was hired, just on like an article by article basis, we're not talking about, a staff position and making, how much money would, no, just freelance. And, when you have ideas for articles, let us know. It was more like that kind of thing. So I came up with an idea. Best sports movies. And when I pitched it, I said, well, what do you think about a best sports movies? Let's say I talk about 5, like maybe 500 words on each or something like that. And he says, yeah, you know what? That's great, Jared. That's a great idea. I really think that our readership will go for it. He says, but I got to make one editorial comment. Just one. Yeah? What's that? He goes, do not write about A League of Their Own. And he laughed and laughed, but I took him seriously. I did not write about it. I wasn't going to because I wouldn't have had it in my top 5. But the fact that, of all things, he had a similar reaction. It was a movie that he liked, but he thought was overrated. He didn't love it. I'd give it 3 stars out of 4, but I feel like it should have been better. What movies did I write about in that article? I had one renegade pick, but I did the standards. The Natural, Robert Redford. Chariots of Fire, my all-time favorite movie. Victory, with Stallone and Pele and Michael Caine, another one of my all-time favorites. I think I only did 4. The 4th was the renegade pick. I did the tennis movie with Paul Bettany and Kirsten Dunst called Wimbledon. I think that's the most underrated, fantastic sports film ever made. I might have to do an episode on that. And that one has all kinds of sexual politics and some hilarious Sigmund Freud level stuff that had me screaming the first time I saw the movie when I realized what was going on. But A League of Their Own is a worthy entry into the baseball movie pantheon. I mean, I think it's better than, is it better than Major League? I think you would have to say it's tight. Major League is a totally different kind of baseball movie, and obviously that became something of a franchise itself. I like Major League. I've seen that movie at least a dozen times. That has a high rewatchability factor. But there are so many really solid elements in A League of Their Own. The way the time period is set, the period uniforms and the hairstyles, and just a general feel. It is a comfortable movie to watch, and it's a pleasant way to pass 2 hours, in my case, to pass 2 hours in the cinemas on a random July day in 1992 with me still only 18 years old. A League of Their Own, released on this day, 1992. It's hard to believe. Happy 33rd anniversary to the release of A League of Their Own, and also to Eddie Murphy's Boomerang, written and directed by the Hudlin brothers, a couple of Harvard graduates. I knew a guy at Bev's Gym who went to Harvard with them. I thought that was pretty cool. This has been episode 576 of the Confessions of a Not So Dangerous Mind podcast. I'd like to thank you all so much for spending some of your Tuesday afternoon here with me in New York. And if you check out this episode on the YouTube channel, haven't done so already, please click like, subscribe, comment, share, turn on those notifications. Or if you catch this episode on the audio platforms such as Podbean, Spotify, iTunes, or the others in which we're hosted, same general rule applies. Click like, subscribe, share, and turn on those notifications. I'll be back with a new episode real soon. Until then, there's no crying in baseball. No crying! Peace.